Thanks very much for inviting me to speak today. Unfortunately, I can't stay for the whole day because we've got to go and give another presentation to another bunch of government people to get their views on what they think we've done. But can I congratulate the network on running this forum? I think it's a great idea, and also on the work that people in the network and associated groups have put into this review of the SWIOID, as Terry said, the Snowy Water Inquiry Implementation Deed. We've had a lot of input from stakeholders, and it's been really gratifying the amount of work and effort that people have put into it. So can I thank you on behalf of the team who's been working. Probably you all know what the problem is. Basically, the problem is that the deed, the SWIOID, was agreed about in 2002, so that's nearly 25 years ago. It has not been reviewed in that time. The world has moved on quite significantly since 2002. Water management is quite a different kettle of fish these days. It's totally, I think, revamped since 2002. And while the original intent of the deed was to put more water down the Snowy and Murrumbidgee rivers in particular, it's certainly agreed today that the volume of water and the timing of the water that's been going down those rivers really hasn't done what it was intended to do. The idea was that there'd be a balance between water going down the rivers, between energy and the environment, and it would, the agreement would work for a long time. Well, the agreement certainly worked for a long time, been in place for a long time, but you'd have to say, by today's standards, it's certainly not fit for purpose. The flow volumes, the timing is wrong, the volume is wrong. We're seeing an increasing number of endangered species, and some of them are quite at risk. The governance arrangements for the deed are really inappropriate because the ACT is not involved, even though the Murrumbidgee flows right through the ACT. First Nations are not involved, the community is not involved. So there's a real need to revise the governance arrangements to be appropriate for the modern era. And of course, on top of all that, we've got growing population in the area, and climate change is upon us, so that's going to make added pressures on the water in the rivers. And the rivers, as everybody will know, they're at risk of further deterioration, and species are at risk, and human health is at risk in relation to water quality. So our aim in reviewing the deed was really to minimise the impacts on Snowy Hydro's energy generation and the national energy market, but at the same time improving the health of the river, and particularly the Murrumbidgee River, because our terms of reference really focused on the upper Murrumbidgee. We've had submissions from 136 people, which has been really good. We've done lots of meetings with people. The messages that we're getting are pretty clear and pretty consistent. River health is declining. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Poor conditions, species under threat. The deed is outdated, as I've just said. There's not a lot of monitoring and public reporting and accountability. You don't see regular reports on how things are progressing. Environmental flows are clearly insufficient. And that's the volumes and timing of them. Planning is fragmented, so local people don't get a say, and First Nations don't get a say. The ACT doesn't get a formal say, although they do get a bit of a say now. And the flows, it's quite clear, I think, in this day and age that fixing up water is not sufficient by itself. More water is good, but more water is not sufficient by itself. So you actually need to do things in the catchment generally that surround the water. And of course, other than the efforts of you guys, not a lot has sort of been formally done as part of the deed arrangements. So, what are we going to recommend? Next slide. There we are. The direction that we're going. We're trying to finalise our recommendations by tomorrow night. Would you believe we're supposed to be finalising the report by Sunday? So we're all going to have a wonderful time reading for the next few days, trying to get it all together. But the sort of direction that we're thinking about is there really needs to be a whole-of-system approach to this, a whole-of-system planning, so that water, energy and regional planning are all taken into account and they all work together. We've talked about the deed being totally unfit for purpose in this day and age, so I really want to bring it into line with what happens under the Water Act and other modern water arrangements like Murray-Darling Basin, So you really need to have all of the jurisdictions who are involved in this, involved in the decision making. You need to have First Nations involved, need to have the community involved, and the roles need to be clear. As well, there needs to be independent oversight to make sure things are happening as they're supposed to. There needs to be independent monitoring, there needs to be public reporting of all this, and there needs to be appropriate compliance. And every now and then, like there is for the Basin Plan and Water Act, there needs to be a review of what's going on and recommendations for change, particularly in the light of climate change. I've mentioned that First Nations and the community aren't involved, so they need to be embedded in the whole process to make sure that they're appropriately consulted and involved. The trade-offs between energy and water use need to become transparent and not unavailable or not unknown. And as I said, we're trying to minimise impacts on the NEM and on Snowy Hydro's generation, but ensure the health of the river is maintained at the same time. We need to have measurable objectives, because one of the problems with the initial deed is that it talks about, in vague terms about improving the health of things, but there aren't measurable objectives that you can go out and say, yes, they've met that objective, no, they haven't. So we're saying there need to be measurable objectives, so performance measures, and then monitoring against those measures, and then public reporting of all that, and enforceability mechanisms, and ensuring that there is compliance, we're recommending 5 yearly audits and a 10-yearly review by independent agencies, so like the Productivity Commission. We think that when we're talking about water, which isn't always predictable, and rainfall and things, there needs to be adaptive management. So New South Wales has been trying these trigger flows, these flexible flows. Building on that sort of process, we're suggesting that there need to be adaptive water flows, so that, for instance, if there need to be planned water flows that go down put down the Murrumbidgee, like base flows and things, but there need to be adaptive ones as well. So for instance, if there's a rainfall event and you want a bigger flow, then you put down some more water yourself from the water that's reserved to go down the river, so you get a better flush in the system. And that arrangement will need to be worked out between the New South Wales Government and Snowy Hydro as to how that's done. And what we're saying is that there needs to be a proper process to work out how that works. We don't want to have a negative impact on the NEM or Snowy Hydro, so there's got to be a decision-making process put in place. It's got to be very timely, because you can't wait too long. And then if that can't be resolved between those two entities, we're recommending an independent statutory position, and that person makes a decision according to a particular decision tree. And we're hoping that that person never actually has to do anything, that Snowy and New South Wales will work it out themselves, or at least if they do need that decision maker, they'll only need them once or twice before they actually work out how to work it out themselves. We're recommending that there really need to be complementary catchment measures, that all governments and Snowy need to be involved in fixing up the catchments. And we're recommending that there needs to be a sustainable funding model. So, for instance, in the mouth of the Snowy River, the East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority had a 10-year funding program from the Victorian Government, and the change in that catchment is really quite dramatic. So there really needs to be long-term funding committed to ensure that the catchments are properly repaired. Moving right along, we have thought really hard, and there's been a lot of modelling done about the impacts on the national electricity market and Snowy Hydro's generation. If you look at the second bottom line in there, this is the really big issue, I think, that the scale of foregone generation is actually pretty small in terms of the whole system. It's equivalent to less than about 4% of Snowy Hydro's annual generation, and approximately 0.05 to 0.1% of the total national electricity market generation. So it's a very small amount in the scheme of things. And all the modelling that we've done suggests that Snowy can forego energy lost, which is about the 3 to 4% at less valuable times for the energy in the market, and environmental water can be released. So lost energy would be worth about $150 a megawatt hour, which is quite low in the scheme of prices for energy. So we're saying that we think the impacts on the energy market and on Snowy Hydro will be relatively small. What we're proposing will not cause the system black, and in fact this independent decision maker we have obviously has to be sensitive to what's going on in the energy market at the time. If there's a real problem, well, obviously the energy goes to snowy hydro. If there's not, the water goes down. So we don't see any issue is going to arise with a really dramatic impact on the NEM, and also we're not proposing anything that would lead to 50% of Tantangara Dam being unavailable for energy use, which has been circulating from somewhere. We're not sure where. Moving on quickly to finish up, the next steps. We're trying to finalise the draft report at the moment. The draft report will come out in about a week or so, and it's available for public comment, and we'd really appreciate your comments, because if we've missed anything or got something wrong, please don't hesitate to tell us. We had a good meeting with the stakeholder advisory group yesterday, and a bunch of additional things came out that we need to think about. I'm not sure we'll get them all done before the draft comes out, but we'll certainly take them on board for the final. So there's about a month of have your say, so I'd really encourage you to have your say what you think about it, whether you think it'll work or not. And then in August through September, we'll be revising the report, and the idea is that we get the final report to Minister Watt, Minister Bowen and Minister Gallagher in September 26. So there's not long to go, but can I thank you already for your inputs again, and encourage you to have a look at the draft report, and we'll probably have enough in the exec summary and the recommendations that you don't have to read it all, but please give us your feedback on what we've said. So thank you, Terry.